Hello, this is John Horton-Young. Today we're going to be talking about trauma. Now, the first thing I want you to understand about this discussion is that it is not meant to be at all comprehensive. It's going to be a very simplistic view in order to provide a baseline for some of the videos that we're going to have coming up. The important thing to understand about that is I want to make sure nobody feels as though I am minimizing the impact of trauma. Nobody understands better than me the severity of the impact of trauma. And honestly, it would break my heart if anybody thought I was minimizing that impact. So, this video is going to be broken into two parts. The first one's going to be trauma, and the second one's going to be about complex trauma. Now, here's the difference between those two things. Trauma are traumas that happen to us as adults with our fully formed adult brains. They can be single event traumas, they can also be multiple event traumas. Complex trauma are traumas that happen to us as children, particularly under the age of adolescence, though certainly they can continue into adolescence. They usually happen over an extended period of time, often unfortunately a child's entire childhood, and usually involve somebody close to us, a caregiver, a close family member, a family friend. So, let's start with our discussion on trauma. Some things to keep in mind as we talk about trauma. Our brains are designed to do two basic things: go out and produce other little brains and keep us alive and safe. Trauma is a biological function in the brain designed to achieve that second objective of keeping us alive and safe. Unfortunately, it evolved during a time when we did not have bombs, we did not have guns, we did not have modern warfare, we did not have cars smashing into each other at 50 miles an hour, we did not have people torturing each other. In other words, this biological function gets overwhelmed by the horror shows that modern society is able to generate. I heard a quote once that explains this perfectly on Hidden Brain on NPR, and I wish I could give it proper credit to the person who said it, but I can't remember who it was. What they said was, we are basically stumbling through the 21st century in brains that were designed during the Stone Age. So to better understand trauma and the way all of this works, I want to take a step back and let's look at one of our early human ancestors out hunting in the plains. So let's say that early ancestor is walking along and he sees a tall grass moving, and out of the grass jumps a tiger and attacks him, and he survives. Here's what the brain's going to do. It's going to try to make sure that that never happens again to keep you safe. It's going to do that a couple ways. One is it can remember the memory of the tiger attack with incredible detail and very vividly. That way, I can easily identify danger when I recall this memory. I can easily identify that tigers are something to be afraid of, so I stay away from them. The implication of that, unfortunately, is that our early ancestor may have had very vivid nightmares about the event. Or when he remembers it, it could be remembered in such detail that it's almost like he's re-experiencing the event. The other thing that's going to happen is that the brain will set certain triggers. What it'll do is it'll look for indicators in the environment that indicate danger may be coming. So it sees a tall grass move, sets that as a trigger. Maybe it's the wind blowing. Maybe it's a certain smell. So that as soon as I experience any of those things, I will instantly react without thinking. And that's an important part of this. The part of our brain that's responsible for some of our higher order thinking actually gets compromised in this process, so I don't think. Because our ancestors that stood around thinking about, should I be afraid? What's going on? They didn't survive to produce other little brains. The ones who just like this ran, they're the ones who survived. And when our ancestor reacts to that grass moving, it can happen completely outside of his awareness. He may not even be aware that he was reacting to the grass. He's not thinking about a tiger. He's not thinking about anything, he's acting. Now, as you can see, this was real adaptive for our early ancestors. The problem again is that this gets overwhelmed in modern society with some of the traumas that we experience. And so the symptoms can look very different. Even though it's the same process, the severity of it can be much worse. So for instance, everything can become a trigger. And so I'm constantly in anxiety. I'm constantly scanning my environment for danger. The other thing that can happen is I can suddenly have bursts of anger for no reasons that I can't quite understand. Just like our ancestor couldn't understand why he ran, and it was the grass that made him run, I may not understand why I'm getting so damned angry. Depression is also another thing that can be the result of this. There are many, many different ways that trauma can present in symptoms. And this is again, a drastic oversimplification, just to give you a baseline understanding of this. Here's the good news. These memories can be reprocessed. So basically, they can be processed to function more like our day-to-day memories. We can remember the event, we can remember that it was frightening without being frightened. The memory won't be so vivid. We won't have the flashbacks, we won't have the nightmares. The triggers can be dulled so that when I see something that happened that was part of the environment, when I experienced a trauma, it no longer gets me just to react like this. I actually can stop and think and evaluate, which is a little more important for us in a modern society to be able to do that. So here's what I would recommend. If you've ever suffered a trauma, go ahead and contact me or another therapist that specializes in trauma that you're comfortable with. And let's evaluate how that trauma may or may not have affected you. Trauma can affect you in a lot of subtle and a wide variety of ways. So it is important that we take a look and see how this may have affected you. So that's the end of this video. Please have a great day and enjoy part 2 of this where I talk about complex trauma. Thank you.